In part 2 of our series, we asked the question, do you know God, our rock who strengthens? There are certain biblical stories that stand out. We learn them as children through Sunday school or listening to our parents read them. One such story is typically referred to as David and Goliath. From churches around the world, thousands of messages have been preached on the spiritual significance of this story. Let me quickly summarize the key events as found in 1 Samuel 17. There is a pending war between the Philistines and Israelites, and the Philistines have what appears to be a little advantage. Well, it's not really little, actually quite big, in the form of an almost 10-foot giant named Goliath. For 40 days he challenges someone from the Israelite camp to fight him, on the basis that whichever individual wins, their nation wins the war. It was a winner-take-all type of match. The reaction of the Israelites was, in plain English, forget it, and nobody was willing to take the challenge. Then David appears on the scene. He had been out in the fields tending to his sheep when his father tells him to go to the battlefield and check on his brothers. While there, Goliath made one of his usual challenges. David saw him, and his reaction was, and I'm paraphrasing, "Who or what is that?" Well, actually what he said in verse 26 was, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" In verse 32, David says, "I will go fight him." Now, David didn't have any elaborate battle plan. We read in verse 40, "Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand approached the Philistine." And as the old saying goes, the rest is history. With one rock he struck the giant Goliath and killed him. The Philistines took off and the Israelites were victorious. God is our rock that strengthens us. It is significant that David used a rock to kill Goliath. But it wasn't the rock in a physical sense that killed him, but it was God, our rock. Years later, David would say in Psalm 62 and 7, "The rock of my strength, my refuge is in God." When David picked up those rocks from the stream, he knew that on their own they would not bring the victory. He said to Goliath as he approached him, "This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands." Then in verse 47 we read, "All those gathered there will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." It is unlikely we will have to face any 10-foot giants in our life. But just maybe it would be easier than some of the giants we do have to face. When life is tough and we are called to face difficult circumstances, what is it we look for? We look for strength. Where do we find it? Family, friends, our own resilience. But more than anywhere, we can find it in God, our rock. David's bravery and faith was very evident that day. But David would later face giants in his life that were more difficult to defeat than Goliath. It was such situations that led him to reach out to God. And in Psalm 31, 2 and 3 we read, "Be to me a rock of strength, a stronghold to save me, for you are my rock and my fortress." Difficult times are not easy to face, and when called upon to do so, we need strength that often goes beyond our own capabilities. That physical, emotional, and spiritual strength we need is found in God, our rock of strength. In Matthew 7, 24 and 25, we see another illustration of God as our rock that strengthens. Jesus spoke these words, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat up on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock." The concept of building a physical structure on a solid foundation is nothing new, and we know how important it is. The wise person also knows that emotional and spiritual strength requires a firm foundation, and only God can truly provide that. Psalm 94 and 22 says, "The Lord has become my stronghold, and my God, the rock of my refuge." Knowing something and living something can often be two different things. Knowing that true strength for our daily living is found only in God is one thing. Living on that basis doesn't always come natural for us, and we have to apply it to our lives on a regular basis. While people know the importance of building a physical structure on a strong foundation, there are many who do not do so. Likewise, spiritually, there are many who either live their entire lives or experience specific times when their foundation for daily living is not very strong. If we go back to David's life, we will see certain times when we might wonder what happened to this brave young man who stood up to the giant Goliath. Times in his life when he failed miserably. But we also see how he eventually responded to such times and how he relied on God's strength to bring him through. No matter the circumstances in our life, we must always recognize the importance of drawing on God's strength to help us live a victorious life.